I knew something was wrong the moment I saw the water rippling unnaturally across the marina because my boat, the Blue Sentinel, wasn't where I had docked it. The spot was empty. Just ropes dangling, swaying like they were mocking me. But before I could even process the shock, my phone buzzed with a video message that made my blood boil. There she was, Karen, the HOA menace herself, standing on the deck of my boat with a margarita in her hand, shouting, "Girls' night on my new boat." The camera panned around, showing 5 of her friends dancing, screaming, and tossing confetti like they owned the ocean. She stole my boat. She actually stole my boat. But what Karen didn't know, the part that made this whole thing delicious, was that I wasn't just any homeowner. I wasn't just the guy she constantly wrote HOA violation letters to. I was an off-duty Coast Guard officer with full authority to act when a vessel was stolen, misused, or operated illegally. And tonight, she had ticked every single box. My chest tightened. Not from fear, no. From the adrenaline of a situation that could go very, very badly for her. Salt air pressed against my face as I sprinted across the dock, scanning for any sign of her heading toward open water. I knew Karen had always been a tyrant, harassing neighbors, issuing bogus fines, threatening lawsuits over lawn decor, but this was a new level of insanity. A rational person would have called the police immediately. A normal person would have reported the theft and waited. I wasn't normal. Because in the Coast Guard, you learn 2 things. Boats are sacred. The ocean doesn't forgive stupidity. And Karen was about to learn both. I contacted dispatch, my voice steady but sharp. I gave the boat ID, direction of travel, and probable intoxication of the captain. As soon as they heard her location right near the restricted wildlife channel, they activated emergency protocol. Karen had steered my boat straight toward an area where untrained navigation could cause catastrophic damage, not just to the environment but to everyone on board. Good. Let the system catch her in the act. But I wasn't waiting on shore. I hopped into a patrol rib already fueled and ready, thanks to the marina's emergency ready policy. The engine roared to life under me as I shot out into the dark water, the spray cold and sharp against my skin. I could already hear faint screams of laughter in the distance. Karen was partying. I was hunting. The night air grew colder as I pushed the rib to full throttle, the bow slamming against the dark swells while moonlight carved silver lines across the surface. In the distance, faint music thumped Karen's party cruise. Every beat was a reminder that she was celebrating on my boat, burning fuel I paid for, risking lives she didn't even have the sense to protect. Typical Karen chaos wrapped in confidence, sailing straight into danger she didn't understand. I radioed in my position. "This is Owens, closing distance with the stolen vessel. Visibility low, but audio contact confirmed." The response crackled back, "Copy that. Backup en route. Proceed with caution." Caution. A word Karen had never used in her entire HOA reign. As I cut through the dark water, my thoughts flashed back to every petty rule she'd enforced, the fines for non-regulation flowers, the citation for leaving my garden hose visible, the threats over my unapproved patriotic flag. But this was different. This wasn't HOA power play. This was federal-level stupidity, and the ocean was no playground. The music grew louder, and soon I could see the lights, my boat glowing like a drunken beacon drifting where it absolutely shouldn't be. They had strung fairy lights across the rails, and Karen's friends were hanging over the edge, waving bottles and shrieking into the night. Someone yelled, "Karen! We're going too fast." Her response? "Relax." I watched a sailing tutorial. My jaw tightened. Tutorials didn't save lives. Suddenly, the boat veered hard left, too hard. The hull slapped violently against the chop, and I saw one of the women stumble, nearly tumbling overboard. My pulse spiked. They were seconds from disaster. I angled my rib to intercept, but before I could close the final gap, the boat's spotlight swung wildly and caught me in its beam. Karen's voice screeched out over the speaker system. "Hey! Why is some random man following us? Is this one of your exes, Brenda?" I grabbed my loud highlighter. "Karen! This is the Coast Guard. Cut your engine now." Her friends froze. Karen didn't. She tossed her drink aside, grabbed the wheel with both hands, and shouted back, "This is harassment. I'll be reporting you to the HOA." She sped up. My heart lurched. She was headed straight toward the protected channel, a narrow stretch where the tide shifted unpredictably and reef sat just below the surface. One wrong turn and the boat and everyone on it could be shredded. This was no longer a chase. It was a rescue mission. I gripped the wheel tighter as Karen barreled the boat toward the restricted wildlife channel. She had no idea what she was doing, no charts, no depth awareness, no clue that the tides around this area shifted fast enough to drag a careless vessel straight into submerged rock. But Karen wasn't thinking about survival. She was thinking about winning, even when no one was competing with her. The wind whipped across my face as I pushed the rib to keep up. Every second mattered. If she crossed into the channel, not only would she be breaking 3 federal regulations at once, but she'd be risking a collision that could throw everyone on board into the freezing water. And with the amount they had been drinking, hypothermia wouldn't take long to settle in. I radioed again. "This is Owens. Suspect accelerating heading straight into the wildlife zone." Dispatch replied, "Understood. Back up 4 minutes out." 4 minutes. Karen didn't have 4 minutes. My spotlight illuminated the waves ahead, revealing the first warning buoy bright orange, flashing, screaming danger to anyone with half a brain. Karen, unfortunately, had decided hers was optional. She blew past the buoy like it was a suggestion. I heard her shout into the night, "These signs are just to scare tourists." I swore under my breath. Tourists? Sure. Her friends began to panic. One woman clutched the railing and yelled, "Karen, turn around." Another tried to grab the wheel, but Karen shoved her away, insisting, "I know what I'm doing. My cousin used to own a jet ski." Owning a jet ski wasn't a qualification. It wasn't even experience. It was a warning sign. I closed the final distance between our boats, bringing the rib alongside the port side of the Blue Sentinel. "Karen, cut your engine. You're entering federal protected waters. This is a criminal offense." Karen whirled around, squinting at me with drunken indignation. "You again? Stop chasing us like you're some kind of hero." I didn't bother answering. The reef map was burned into my memory. She was seconds from disaster. Then I saw it happen. She jerked the wheel to avoid another buoy, overcorrected, and the bow slammed against an unseen swell. The whole boat lurched violently. 2 women screamed as they tumbled onto the deck. The engine coughed, sputtered, and Karen lost her balance, crashing into the throttle. The boat surged forward straight toward a jagged outcrop. I floored my rib engine. If I didn't act now, someone was going overboard. Maybe all of them. This wasn't about HOA nonsense anymore. This was survival. The jagged outcrop rose out of the water like a dark blade, and Karen's reckless surge was carrying my boat straight toward it. I yanked the rib into position, cutting across her trajectory. The timing had to be perfect. One miscalculation, and I'd be pulling bodies out of the water instead of tantrums off a stolen vessel. I slammed the throttle, sending a plume of spray into the air as I positioned myself between Karen's boat and the outcrop. The collision alarm in my head screamed at me. I grabbed the loud highlighter again and roared, "Karen! Cut the engine! Now!" But she wasn't listening. She was scrambling, clawing at the controls, yelling at her friends as if they were the problem and not the rock wall rushing toward them. One of the passengers, clearly the only sober one, lunged forward and managed to pull the throttle back. The engine sputtered, coughed, then finally hissed into idle. The boat slowed, drifting, carried by the current but no longer accelerating toward disaster. It bought me precious seconds. I tossed my grappling hook and secured the rib to the starboard rail of the Blue Sentinel. The collision still wasn't entirely avoided. The drifting momentum carried them closer to the rocks than I liked, but now the danger was manageable. I climbed aboard in one swift motion and immediately took control of the wheel. The deck was chaos. Glitter, spilled drinks, tangled decorations, and panicked women clutching each other like the boat was about to split in half. Karen stood in the middle of it all, hair soaked, makeup running, waving her arms like she was the star of a reality show meltdown. "You can't just get on my boat," she screamed. "My boat," I corrected sharply, turning the wheel to angle away from the rocks. "And you're lucky I did." Karen blinked at me, stunned. "That's not possible. You're lying." "I'll call the HOA president." "Call whoever you want," I replied. "But first, sit down unless you want to swim." She opened her mouth, ready to launch into another tirade, but a sudden jolt rocked us as the current tugged at the hull, reminding everyone how close we were to the danger zone. Karen yelped and dropped into the nearest seat, clutching the armrest like it was a lifeline. I steadied the boat, guiding us away from the hazard. The women watched me with a mix of fear and relief. One whispered, "Thank you." But this wasn't over. Not even close. Because the Coast Guard backup was minutes away and Karen was about to face far more than embarrassment. The channel widened as I steered us clear of the rocks, the danger easing but the tension on the boat spiking with every passing second. Karen sat rigidly beside the console, arms crossed, trying to look authoritative despite shaking so hard her bracelets jingled like alarm bells. Her friends were quieter now, hungover on fear more than alcohol, clinging to the rails and whispering frantic prayers. Then, over the gentle slap of waves, came a sound that sent a ripple of dread through Karen but relief through me, the steady thunder of twin outboard engines. Bright white lights swept across the water, cutting through the night as the Coast Guard patrol vessel approached with full authority. Karen stared, wide-eyed. What is that? Why are they coming here?" I kept my voice calm. "Because stolen federal registered vessels get a response." Her jaw dropped. "Federal? Since when is your stupid boat federal?" I turned to her slowly. "Since I'm with the Coast Guard, Karen." She blinked. Then blinked again harder, like reality was something she could shut off if she tried hard enough. "No. No, you are not. You're lying. You can't be Coast Guard, you live in a house with beige siding." I almost laughed. "That's your evidence." But before she could argue further, the patrol boat closed in beside us, bathing our deck in unforgiving light. "Vessel Blue Sentinel, this is Coast Guard Unit 47. Prepare for boarding." The officer's voice echoed across the channel, firm and unmistakably official. Karen shot to her feet. "Oh no. You invited them. This is harassment. I know my rights." One of her friends groaned, "Karen, stop." The officers boarded with smooth precision, 2 on deck, 1 remaining at the helm of their boat. They surveyed the glitter-covered chaos like they were stepping into a circus tent rather than a stolen vessel. One officer, Ramirez, approached me with a nod. "Owens. You good?" "Now I am," I said. He turned to Karen. "Ma'am, we need to ask you a few questions." Karen puffed up like a cornered cat. "I didn't do anything. This is my friend's boat. He said I could use it." I raised an eyebrow. Her friends collectively glanced away, unwilling to lie for her. Ramirez continued, "Ma'am, stepping onto and operating a vessel without permission is considered theft. Entering a protected wildlife channel is a federal offense. And operating while intoxicated." "I'm not drunk." Karen snapped, wobbling as she tried to stand straighter. Ramirez simply shined his light into her red, glassy eyes. Right. Her shoulders sagged. For the first time all night, she looked scared. And the night wasn't done with her yet. Ramirez motioned for Karen to sit, but of course, Karen did the opposite. She planted herself in the center of the deck like a malfunctioning lighthouse, waving her arms and shouting at the officers as if volume could reverse federal law. I know my rights. I'm on the HOA board. You can't arrest me without a warrant. The officers exchanged a look, the kind every Coast Guard member knows well. A look that says, "Oh good, we've got a special one tonight." "Ma'am," Ramirez said patiently, "this isn't about your HOA. This is U.S. maritime law." Karen gasped dramatically. "So you're saying the HOA has no jurisdiction here?" I covered my mouth to hide a smile. "Correct, Karen. The ocean is not governed by Karen law." Her friends snorted. She shot them a betrayed glare. "You're all supposed to support me." One friend whispered, "We didn't sign up to die, Karen." Ramirez held out a small breathalyzer. "Ma'am, we need you to take this test." Karen recoiled as if it were a venomous snake. "Absolutely not. I don't consent to your breath machine." The second officer, Hartley, sighed. "Ma'am, refusing the test is the same as failing it." Karen froze, eyes wide. "What? Since when?" "Since always," Hartley replied. She looked around desperately for support. Her friends avoided eye contact. I crossed my arms, waiting. The ocean rocked beneath us, gentle but insistent, as if urging her to stop embarrassing herself. Finally, Karen grabbed the breathalyzer like she was snatching a microphone. She blew into it with the subtlety of a foghorn. The device beeped. Ramirez checked the reading and nodded grimly. Karen blinked. "What does it say?" "It says you're intoxicated beyond a legal limit." She shrieked. "Your machine is broken." I only had, she counted on her fingers, 2 margaritas. Maybe 3. And half a tequila bottle, but I barely tasted it. Hartley muttered, "Uh-huh. Barely tasted it?" She whirled on me suddenly. "This is your fault. You set me up." I raised an eyebrow. "By not giving you permission to steal my boat." She opened her mouth, closed it, then pointed at the Coast Guard officers. "He caused this. He made me panic and turn left." Ramirez took a step closer. "Ma'am, are you admitting you operated a vessel without authorization and entered a restricted zone?" Karen froze. Her friends groaned in unison. I almost felt bad for her. "Almost." She whispered, "No. I mean yes. I mean look, can we just pretend this didn't happen?" Ramirez shook his head slowly. "No, ma'am. We cannot." For the first time that night, Karen understood the severity of her situation. Karen stood frozen, wobbling slightly as the patrol boat lights washed over her like a spotlight demanding honesty, a foreign concept to her. Her bravado crumbled, and the edges of her confidence curled inward, shrinking with every breath she took. The officers waited in silence, their presence heavy and unmistakably real. No HOA rulebook, no smug speech, no fabricated complaint could save her here. Finally, she inhaled shakily. Okay, maybe I made a teensy mistake." Hartley raised an eyebrow. "Ma'am, you stole a boat, endangered your passengers, entered a restricted zone, and operated while intoxicated." She blinked rapidly. "A medium mistake." Her friends groaned again. One muttered, "Karen, this is why we stopped inviting you last year." Karen whipped around. "You stopped inviting me?" The friend shrugged. "You turned my birthday party into a noise violation complaint against yourself." Karen's face twisted, torn between indignation and the realization she might actually be the problem. She spun back toward Ramirez. "Look, can't we just talk this out? I know people. I'm friends with the HOA president. Hartley whispered to Ramirez, she really thinks the HOA is the government. I shook my head. Every day. The officers guided her to the bench seat, but Karen's meltdown only intensified. She clutched the railing dramatically. I can't go to jail. My hair won't survive it. Hartley replied, deadpan, ma'am, federal holding isn't a salon appointment. Karen gasped. You're mocking me. Ramirez kept his composure. Ma'am, we need you to calm down. We're documenting the incident. You'll have the opportunity to explain everything properly once we're back on shore. She perked up slightly. So I can explain. Yes, Ramirez said. And you'll listen. Yes. And then everything goes away. No. She deflated. Meanwhile, her friends, finally safe, finally sober enough to understand, began thanking the Coast Guard and apologizing on her behalf. One even grabbed my arm. We didn't know she'd steal it. She said it was rented. I sighed. She told me it was her new boat. All of them groaned. That tracks. Karen overheard and leapt up once more, hands flailing. I was trying to give you girls a good time. You never let me host anything. One friend snapped back, Karen, you took us into a restricted federal waterway. Karen folded her arms. Well, excuse me for being adventurous. The officers exchanged another look, half pity, half exhaustion. Finally, Ramirez said, ma'am, we're escorting everyone back to the main dock. You'll be processed there. Please remain seated. Karen slumped down, defeated but still muttering under her breath, this wouldn't have happened if everyone listened to me. The night was ending, but Karen's consequences were just beginning. The ride back to the marina was a quiet, uneasy crawl across the dark water. Karen, for once, had run out of things to yell. She sat with her arms wrapped around herself, shivering not from cold, but from the realization that she couldn't argue, threaten, or hoa her way out of this one. Her friends huddled together, whispering apologies and excuses, avoiding eye contact with her entirely. The Coast Guard patrol boat escorted us with steady precision, lights cutting through the dark like a floating courtroom. Every few minutes, Karen would sigh dramatically, as if hoping someone would rush to comfort her. No one did, not even her loyal one-night squad, who now looked more like they were planning to resign from her life entirely. When we approached the marina, more lights flashed across the docks, local law enforcement waiting to take statements. Karen stiffened. Oh no. No. Why are they here? Ramirez answered calmly, standard procedure for a stolen vessel and intoxicated operation. She pointed at me furiously. He is exaggerating everything. I shook my head. You drove my boat into a restricted federal channel with a margarita in your hand. Karen gasped like I had accused her of treason. It was a skinny margarita. The officers ignored her and secured the boat. When we stepped off onto the dock, her knees buckled, and she grabbed the railing like the ground might attack her. A sheriff's deputy approached with a clipboard. Ma'am, I need your ID. Karen puffed up again, trying desperately to rebuild her shattered confidence. I will have you know I am on the HOA board. This entire situation is a misunderstanding. The deputy didn't even blink. ID. Her friends dug through her purse and handed it over themselves. As statements began, I explained everything clearly: how I found the boat missing, tracked her, watched her nearly crash, and intervened before she put lives at risk. The deputy rode fast, nodding grimly. When he finished, he turned to Karen. Ma'am, you're being charged with unauthorized use of a vessel, operating under the influence, and entering a restricted federal zone. Karen's jaw dropped so far it almost hit the dock. What? I thought you would just give me a warning. Ramirez stepped beside her. You ignored multiple warnings tonight. And, the deputy added, You fled from a Coast Guard officer. Karen shrieked. I didn't flee. I was navigating. Her friends put their faces in their hands. The deputy motioned to the patrol car. Ma'am, come with me. Karen froze. You're arresting me? Me. This is humiliating. I replied calmly, actions have consequences, Karen. She glared at me like I'd personally sunk her battleship. As they led her away, the marina fell silent, until Karen yelled one final line into the night. The HOA will hear about this. Everyone collectively groaned. The aftermath of the night felt surreal. The dock was quiet now, the chaos replaced with the hum of engines shutting down, ropes coiling, and officers filing paperwork. Karen's friends hovered awkwardly, clearly relieved but still rattled by the sheer audacity of what had just happened. I stood at the edge of the dock, arms crossed, watching as Karen disappeared into the sheriff's vehicle, her screams echoing into the night. This is unfair. I demand a hearing. I shook my head, silently savoring the moment. Karen had crossed the line, and for once, the universe and the Coast Guard was serving justice in real time. This wasn't about HOA disputes, petty fines, or neighborhood drama anymore. This was federal law, and it had caught up with her spectacularly. Her friends turned toward me, still wide-eyed. We can't believe she actually did all that," one whispered. "I mean, the boat, the rocks, the Coast Guard." I smiled faintly. It happens when people think rules don't apply to them. Another friend muttered, "She actually endangered us all. I think, maybe she finally learned a lesson." I raised an eyebrow. Maybe. But knowing Karen, she'll find a new way to cause chaos soon enough. The officers were wrapping up their reports. Ramirez approached me with a nod. "Good job keeping control out there. You saved lives tonight." I nodded in acknowledgement. "Just doing my duty." Hartley grinned. "You handled a real-life Karen scenario with perfect patience. That's not something every Coast Guard can claim." I smirked. Patience is key when dealing with HOA royalty. Back on the dock, I checked my boat. Aside from a few scuffed rails and some glitter residue, the Blue Sentinel was intact. My boat had survived the Karen storm, and so had I. I felt a sense of satisfaction I hadn't realized I'd been holding in for years. The universe had delivered a perfect lesson in accountability, and it was hard not to enjoy every second of it. Karen's screams continued in the distance, growing fainter with each passing minute. I couldn't help but chuckle. For years, she had terrorized the neighborhood, thinking no one could stop her. But tonight, her own recklessness, amplified by alcohol and arrogance, had met its match. And the Coast Guard had been there to ensure justice and safety was served. As the lights of the patrol boats dimmed and the night settled into quiet, I finally exhaled. The dock smelled of salt water and gasoline, and the cool breeze carried the echoes of chaos that had unfolded. It was over. Karen would face the consequences, the friends would have a story for the ages, and my boat was mine again, untarnished and victorious. The night had been long, chaotic, and unforgettable, but the lesson was clear: never underestimate the consequences when entitlement meets the law.